This is Scott Becker and the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast, the Becker Business Minute Podcast. And today's discussion is coffee shops, entitlement, and personal etiquette. So this podcast comes out of a specific discussion that was had this morning where a colleague reported on someone at the coffee shop that was completely full. The coffee shop's completely full. So bear with me on this. And the arrogance, the entitlement comment was this concept that this person's the coffee shop in a completely full coffee shop was taking up essentially three seats for themselves. One for the laptop, one for the backpack, one for themselves. Well, people are waiting for chairs at the coffee shop. And the thing that's happened in the modern era, and it's probably reflective of the same kind of person that cuts in line or jumps in front of other people. I remember being at a desk the other day as a couple people sort of walked in front of me, and at somebody I had to assert myself and say, like, I was waiting too. But it's this modern era of so many people working remotely and having almost forgot their manners of working remotely. And it's probably, and I don't mean to generalize, it might be people that weren't raised that well or grew up with a certain amount of entitlement. But this concept of sort of who does that? I remember being on a plane the other day and some person had brought in some huge dog and was so offended that somebody didn't want to sit next to that dog and treated the person who didn't want to sit next to that dog like a second or third or fourth class citizen. And the person with the dog, a normal middle-aged person, I don't mean to judge, but not someone who was like, in horrible disabled shape, anything like that, just a normal, healthy person with that entitlement attitude that it's my dog and he's 80 pounds and I'll put him wherever I want to put him, and can't understand that other people don't love that or don't feel that same way. I think this modern day world of entitlement and privilege and lack of personal etiquette, it shows up in the coffee shops, it shows up in the airlines, it shows up almost wherever you go. And I think it's fascinating. And I'm not one I don't have I guess I'm sort of a loser because I can call people out on the podcast, but I don't have the wherewithal to have the conversation in person with them. God forbid they're carrying a gun and shoot me. But I do find it just to be fascinating, that kind of behavior in public. And obviously, there's times when we're all guilty of it because we're rushed or we're not thinking or something like that. But that seems very different than that entitlement perspective of the world where you just do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it, wherever you're at, regardless of the other people. The person who sent me the tip on this, you'd think that we were like the New York Post. We may send them the $100 Amazon gift certificate for sending me the tip that led for the gist of a podcast. I think it's a topic that's broadly applicable in today's world, and God forbid if you behave yourself that way or your children that way and so forth. But just something to be avoided. I wouldn't out the person who was acting this way. I don't know who they were. I wouldn't post a picture. It's not my thing. It's not how we operate. But I did find it absolutely fascinating to see that kind of behavior. I want to thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please feel free. Send me a text at 773-766-5322 and love to send you the $100 Amazon gift certificate. You're the first to listen to it. Again, coffee shops, etiquette, professional courtesy, and more. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast.